Welcome back. So we continue to shine a spotlight on the developments happening at the Madlanga Commission that is taking place. National Commissioner General Fannie Masemola is today expected to continue with evidence at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry into allegations of criminality, political interference and corruption in the criminal justice system. Yesterday, Masemola, he has told the Madlanga Commission that the disbandment of the KZN Political Killings Task Team occurred whilst he was still on annual leave. Now, the task team was disbanded at the end of December last year. Masemola also disputed Police Minister Senzo Mchunu's statement that the political killings task team was ineffective. Now, the commission, which is investigating Mkhwanazi's allegations against some senior police officials, they started its work on Wednesday last week. So for more, I'm going to be joined by the former head of the Hawks in KwaZulu-Natal, Johan Booysen. Johan, on that note, a very good morning and thank you for your time with us here on the SABC at this hour.
Good morning, Liesl.
Johan, let's start with first impressions. We saw General Fannie Masemola yesterday taking to the stand at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. He spoke to the political killings task team that had been disbanded whilst he was on annual leave. In lieu of this, what do you make of this, this explanation as well? What do you make of his testimony as he took up the stand at day one? We're obviously edging now into day two.
Liesl, it's almost a case of deja vu. If you cast you back to 2011, I was in a very similar situation where there's political interference from the then Minister of Police, Mkhwanazi, and incidentally, the acting National Commissioner at the time was General Mkhwanazi. At the time, consequent to a newspaper article, an entire unit was also closed down without a proper investigation being conducted. And there are also other issues that reminds me of the similar situation, dockets that were taken away at the time, dockets relating to the Mkhwanazi investigation that were taken away and given to the Inspector General and later returned after political pressure. So yes, it's almost a case of deja vu for me.
You know, Han, I actually want to pick up on that because even just reflecting on your own testimony at the Zondo Commission about officers who attempted to bribe you, whilst remaining on active duty, how do you think General Fannie Masemola's testimony perhaps clarifies or contradicts these claims? And then what role should internal affair units at this point be playing to preempt such entrenched networks that we allegedly seeing playing out?
Liesl, can you just repeat the latter part of your question?
Yes, I was just saying, given your own testimony at the Zondo Commission and what, General Fannie Masemola has obviously, alluded to during his first take at the stand, I wonder if you could speak to, what really has happened. How might this testimony itself clarify or even contradict some of the sentiments that had been echoed from you, even just claims about the roles of internal affair units and the role that they should be playing in such entrenched networks that we're seeing, being alluded to?
Liesl, I think, unfortunately, in my view, nothing has changed since my similar experience that I had in 2011, despite my evidence at the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. Okay. There's evidently, and if I listen to the two generals speaking, and if one can believe what they are saying, I now have to caution, most of these are mere allegations at this stage, and it's a completely different kettle of fish to convert information to court-related evidence that will stand scrutiny under cross-examination in court. But yes, in my view, not much has changed. As I've said, in 2011, there's clear political interference by the then Minister Mkhwanazi, and which had resulted in units being closed. So I don't.
Okay, well, Johan, thank you for that, because, on the back of what's obviously transpired, the issue of accountability and leadership, it's also coming to the fore in SAPS. We're looking at the directive from the minister, that obviously had been undertaken in the PKTT being disbanded, the National Commissioner not having any knowledge of that. And so if we're looking at the broader issues at play here and allegations of interference, what should we be reading into the state of SAPS leadership accountability at large as well?
Well, my interpretation of what's emerging from the evidence so far is that there's definitely tension within the leadership of SAPS, which is not conducive to proper policing. And unfortunately, I don't have all the facts at my disposal. I think it remains to be seen, and I think it will be imprudent of myself to comment on the merits of what's been the evidence that has been led thus far. But what emerged from the evidence thus far is that there's definitely tension in the top echelons of SABC leadership.
I mean, the issue of whistleblowing as well, the culture of silencing whistleblowers, that's also something that's come to the fore. Senior police officials being implicated as well, undermining investigations. I wonder if you could speak to that, the systemic issues on that front that also emerge, given what we've seen play out in South Africa.
Well, I think if one look at the recent history of whistleblowers being assassinated, being ostracized, and been targeted, and unfortunately, it's almost become the same story over and over again, where the whistleblower gets investigated, and in some instances are being assassinated.
Well, Johan, the Madlanga Commission probing these allegations, these cover-ups, protection of the powerful as well. It's obviously shining a spotlight on claims also made by KZN Commission Mkhwanazi about the interference in these deployment areas. And so I wonder, in terms of reforms at this point, just from your vantage point, reforms to the Police Act, oversight bodies, ESWAL, IPID, what is urgently needed at this point to just ensure that ministerial directors are transparently scrutinized, they're legally vetted before implementation, and we don't end up in a situation like this once the commission concludes as well?
Liesl, in terms of current legislation, all the checks and balances are in place. It's just that they're not being implemented. One thing that I think could definitely be looked at is the promotion policy within SABC. Presently, as it's been done, it's open to corruption, it's open to nepotism, cronyism, and that ultimately leads to the wrong people appointed in senior posts. So I would advocate a complete overhaul of the promotion policy within SABC to ensure that ultimately that you have the best leaders in those senior positions.
And there are broader implications as well if we do not undertake those reforms. And thank you for speaking to how all the necessary checks and balances in fact do exist, because we've also seen that the testimony highlights Masemola's view that unilateral ministerial instructions undermine SABC's independence. And it could also somewhat derail sensitive investigations into politically motivated killings. I'm saying this because we're wondering, from a security governance perspective, what are some of the long-term risks that this poses to South Africa's democracy, to our stability, even if we hone into places and provinces like KwaZulu-Natal, where we've seen incidences of political violence that remains a flashpoint as well?
I think it speaks for itself. If we continue in this vein, we can almost see an implosion of leadership within SABC, and that eventually permeates down to grassroots level. It impacts on day-to-day policing matters. One thing that struck me yesterday, Liesl, was almost an admission by the National Commissioner that the instruction that he was given was unlawful. I'm a bit concerned that he had placed himself in a position where he executed an unlawful instruction. I was placed in a similar situation a couple of years ago, where I was basically told to stop an investigation, and I made the choice then that I would not comply with that instruction. So I think that's also something that needs to be looked at, how a National Commissioner Police, a Police National Commissioner, had allowed himself to been given an unlawful instruction and then comply with an unlawful instruction. It's common cause amongst policemen that you do not have to comply with an unlawful instruction.
Johan, we can get into that further, because I actually wanted to look at that admission, defying an unlawful order, and perhaps how career limiting this can also be. I think it comes up because, given the stakes in that position, or for public servants of that nature, there are psychological pressures, there are structural pressures as well. And so in reality, even just from your own experience, what really is happening behind the scenes when you're looking at some of those dynamics unfolding? We're not privy to at the point. Talk to us about the legal and ethical mandates that has to be balanced up, of course, in the line of duty on that front as well.
Well, Liesl, when you join the police, and when you are placed in that position, and when you accept the rank and the remuneration that comes with it, you obviously accept the risk that goes along with that. And I think many policemen are placed in that position, and you have to make a conscious decision once you're confronted with such a challenge, whether you're going to comply with such an instruction or not. In my instance, I decided not to, and I think the rest is history. But there is no obligation upon a person to comply with an unlawful instruction. You have to take a conscious decision to not do it, and then deal with the consequences that comes with it.
I mean, Johan, the issue of resources then also come to the fore, right? If we're just looking at the facts and figures coming through for the Madlanga Commission, 147.9 million rand budget, that sparked debates on the value for money, and also just amid calls for immediate docket referrals. And so from your vantage point, as you're weighing in, obviously following the commission, as a former Hawks leader as well, pursued high-level profile cases despite your resources constraints. How can this commission ensure that the findings translate into swift prosecution, systemic reforms, and that trust is also upheld? Because this is ultimately what we're witnessing, commissions and omissions, but implementation at the end of the day is somewhat lacking.
The commission cannot do it. The commission can make recommendations.
Yeah.
Just the Zondo Commission. And unfortunately, many of the Zondo recommendations, and Judge Zondo had actually expressed his dismay recently because a number of those recommendations had not been implemented. So unless there's a political will for those recommendations to be implemented, we'll be back to square one.
So we're obviously monitoring and watching with bated breath. And so, Johan, if we're looking at the way forward now, just how damaging this has been for the country and for our democracy at large when such allegations come to the fore, political interference as well. How, does this obviously affect and erode public trust? If we're even just looking at, the links between national and provincial and local, policing elements as well. What is lacking at this point? How do we ensure that there is that synergy going forward? What is required?
I think strong leadership within SABC is required. And with that, along with that goes the appointment of the right personnel to take up that leadership and to implement what they are required to do, the execution of the law and complying with the Police Act.
Well, Johan, if you were still in charge of the Hawks in KZN, what would you be doing at this point in relation to KZN political killings? What would you have also been implementing at this point had you still been in charge?
Liesel, yes. During my tenure in KZN, I also had a political task team working under my command. The leader of that group was a Brigadier Marensela, and they were just as successful. I do not know the details and all the finer details of the present political task team, what their budget is and the resources are. I'm made to understand that they are quite well resourced. But yes, if I was in the position that I was in, I probably would also proceed with a political task team, because KwaZulu-Natal has been known for years for political violence, especially when it comes just before elections.
Well, Johan, we are watching with bated breath as day 2 obviously is set to continue. I know that you'll also be watching General Fannie Masemola's testimony yet again. So thank you for your time at the Sound for weighing in. We'll leave our conversation there. Johan Booysen, former head of the Hawks in KwaZulu-Natal, he was speaking about the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, what has transpired to date, issues of accountability and leadership within SABC coming to the fore, political interference as well, and really where to from here in terms of reforms. Thank you for his time.